Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from rough and rugged Wyoming. Always rough, always rugged, sometimes Wyoming. It is December 26th, the day after Christmas. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas and we're getting ready for the end of the year. And I'm enjoying a lovely time up here in Gillette, Wyoming, and having a chance to take a look at my construction company, the clinic, and all the other amazing things that are going on. And honestly speaking, they're hauling ass and they're doing amazing stuff. You know, it's been the privilege of a lifetime to watch a dream where you kind of start with something like a clinic and you say, hey, let's go build something like that. And then over a period of 3 years, it goes from just a hypothesis, like maybe kind of sort of, to having over 10,000 square feet, 11,000 patients, and we're building an additional 60,000 square feet. It's pretty crazy when you really think about it. You see all those things moving along. And, you know, July 4th is going to be a really good and fun time because actually that's when the expansion will be done. All the service lines will be operational. There's going to linger and be an additional 4 to 5 months of construction for the biotechnology building, which will be an additional 20,000 square feet. It's currently where the UPS building is. We bought that. We had to buy a lot of land and do a lot of these things. And the area we built the clinic was really not designed for this. So the amount of dirt work we had to do and water mitigation and grading and other things is pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. But I'm pretty proud of it. You know, 11,000 patients. I think we'll be up to about 15,000 patients. And we should definitely be able to turn on all those other service lines that we have. It's a multi-specialty practice. Internal medicine and cardiology and nephrology, soon to be neurology, got the dermatology, all these types of things. We acquired, I think, more than 20 acres so far, and we may acquire a little bit more land for future growth and expansion. But it's pretty special. To actually watch it all come together. And actually, it's been a hell of a year, hasn't it? We're dealing with so much going on. Governance is here. It's messy, and a lot of people are learning how to handle it. Lots of people are getting excited about serving as a D rep. A lot of people are trying to figure out what it means, Cardano governance. For the first time in a long time, a lot of people in the industry are starting to pay attention to Cardano again and say, hey, I thought you guys were dead. Oh my, you're still around. Oh, okay. What's this governance thing about? What's this on-chain update about? Is it like Polkadot? And so obviously we have a long road to go and we have a lot to do. But I'm pretty proud of the fact that a lot of people stepped up and they're getting it done. You can't always get what you want, but what's nice is everybody's honest. For a long time, there were a lot of people who had pent up grievances, myself included. And you know what? Now we all get to be honest. It's no dishonesty to say that there were certainly some disgruntled people that didn't really like IOG that left, joined the foundation, and they kind of silently went about their job. But now they can go to Twitter and tell Twitter what they really feel. And they get to basically blame every problem in the entire world on me or somebody else. And also I get to finally say things that for the last 3 years have deeply bothered me. And that's the nature of governance, and people in the ecosystem, they can take it as they will. Some people are excited for the drama. Some people hate the drama. Some people think, well, we should just move forward and find some productive compromise. And the good news is with on-chain governance, everything can be kind of sorted out, figured out. People are going to come together. I posted a video not too long ago on my Twitter feed of a bunch of ants solving a problem. And it just blows people's minds when they see that. It's just these little creatures that individually are not very smart, but when they work as a collective whole, they can solve complex problems on a huge scale. And the only reason why they don't run the planet is because they're very small. But they're certainly trying. There's a lot more insects than there are people. And when you think about the nature of swarm intelligence, when all the people come together in the Cardano ecosystem and they start solving problems together and coming up with clever ideas, our best days are definitely ahead of us, and it gets me very, very excited. So, it's nice to see. And it was a dream 10 years ago. I don't think people fully understand how small and weak and fledgling, there was a time that if I was just hit by a bus or, something happened, I don't think we would have gotten where we're at. But now that we're here, there's a lot of people running around saying we need to get rid of Charles. It's amazing, that transformation. It really is when you think about it. And it's hard as a founder when you watch these things grow and change. You make a lot of friends along the way, and you always have to figure out what's your role and place and purpose. I have a strong distaste for dishonesty, and I have a strong distaste for duplicity. Nothing pisses me off more than when people lie to my face, and nothing pisses me off more when people manipulate people and use half-truths to try to get people to do what they want or convince them that something is the way it is when it's not. And you see that, and it comes out at times, and it's a rage because at the end of the day, purpose of these things is to hurt people that I love and things that I love. And an ecosystem that's been the center point of my life for 10 years. And it's hard because sometimes you just have to let people have their own fights, and you have to let them grow up. It's like being a parent. You watch your kids get into things they probably shouldn't, and you say, they've gotten to the age where they're just going to have to figure this out. So we're starting to get to that. But I do believe the on-chain government will get where it needs to go. And I do believe that our best days are ahead of us. So let's get to your questions. Best whiskey. The cheapest, best drinking whiskey around, it's made in Japan. It's called Hibiki Harmony. It's about $100 a bottle. And I say cheap because whiskey can get up to like 10 grand. Bull cycle. Yes, sir. 2025 is going to be crazy. We're just getting started. What style of games your brother building for NES or Super Nintendo? I want to know so I can start designing some stuff for chips. That's going to be up to the sponsoring content. So the company's name is Hosk Brew, and we have a lot of plans, and we'll make a dedicated video about it and a lot of marketing about it. But if you're interested, just talk to JJ, and we'll get you on the list, and we can figure it out. We can do CRPGs. We can do standard adventure games. We can do FPSs. There's a lot of options that are there. Does anyone keep you in check every single day? It's kind of funny. When you're in my position, you can't make a mistake. And you can't even be perceived to make a mistake. I'll give you a great example of that. So the other day, I saw a bot on Twitter, and the bot had very lifelike behavior. I was kind of curious about it. I said, what are the limits of this type of bot? So it's criticizing Cardano. It's like this attack bot. So I try to catch the bot in a loop. And I say, all right, well, what are your grievances? And then it goes off and goes to its pre-programmed stuff. And then I follow up with another question, trying to drill in. And I'm really trying to play with this bot because I want to understand at what point does it lose its depth. And then a community member stepped in, and then I said, hey, guys, I know it's a bot. I'm playing with it. I'm trying to figure this out. Well, the whole conversation was clipped up, and only a part of it was spread around, make it look like I didn't know it was a bot, and I didn't care, and I'm just incompetent and whatever. Front page of cryptocurrency Reddit. And then one of the tweets had over 1 million impressions, tens of thousands of retweets about it, and obviously just a personal attack. And it's amazing because when we had our signing of the Constitution of Cardano, the most significant event in the history of Cardano was not on the front page of cryptocurrency Reddit, but a thread making me look bad was. And, it's like, guys, Lars Brunius has been working for 2 years on the MeBox idea. I invited Rudy Rucker, the inventor of the Lifebox concept, to my summit in 2019 in Miami. And he spoke there with Stephen Wolfram about the Lifebox and these other things. So, you'd think maybe, just maybe, that we're kind of curious about what bots can do. Reflect, one of the companies we had in the portfolio, was doing digital twins for over a year. We're quite interested in this, and we've been discussing internally this idea of creating digital twins of ourselves for various different utilities, either to analyze things or to interact with people or help desk support. So maybe, just maybe, when you see a bot, you're always curious, where did that come from and what capabilities it has. Like, for example, I've been thinking in 2025 to create a Twitter bot version of myself to run my Twitter feed, so I don't actually have to manage it, because it's becoming diminishing returns. But apparently we don't know any of that, because the internet's not built for that. It's built for controversy. And so who keeps me in check? Pretty much everybody, every day, even for things we don't do. How long till you're back in wolf mode? And this irritates me. It's pointless to pick fights with people. When we get into a fight about $600 million of the community's money and the future of the community's governance and who is accountable to whom, I think that's a conversation worth having. But apparently that's not wolf mode. So what is then? Just never get in a fight? Never ever stand up for anything? Never fight for anything? Just be fun and happy to every single person and agreeable to every person, even people that you feel are stealing from you or are causing harm to the ecosystem, causing harm to others? So is wolf mode being on the subway train that Guatemalan guy walks over and douses somebody in gasoline, sets them on fire, and doing nothing? Because that would be a fight and being disagreeable. Oh no, but no, we should. And how do we do that? What's the test? My test is pretty simple. When something affects everyone, and in my view, pretty wolf mode to me. Charles, not sure if you remember. Is this real life, not AI or anything? Well, I mean, if you can't tell the difference, doesn't matter. Please talk about Chainlink. What are the techies talking about? In 2021, and us, we talked about integration. They agreed to do it. And for a long time, I thought they had integrated on the chain. And then I was told that they hadn't. Where I don't think there's a commercial issue or a disagreement or an integration or technical issue. I think that just something got crosswired and an accountable party to do it's no longer around. So we do care about oracles. There's Charlie 3, there's Flare that we just talked to, and we're looking about integration there. And also Chainlink is something that we've wanted. I know Sergey Nazarov. The Chainlink ecosystem's always been very friendly to us. So we'll circle back and I'll find out what happened there. Peter asks, what's your biggest learning or takeaway from Constitutional Convention? Peter, Sydney, Australia delegate. Well, first, thank you for your service. The biggest thing probably there was an enormous amount that went into it, and it was an event of the willing. And the fact that the service hasn't ended, the delegates continue. All of them. I love the courage that they have, and I love the commitment that they have to Cardano. And I know that they're going to get where they need to be. A good possibility the Constitution will get passed on chain, but that's just the beginning. We have to improve the governance system to be more inclusive and to be more fair. And so there's a lot more code to write. There's a lot more protocols to explore. But at least we have people. Charles, could get an AMA with you, David Schwartz, Ugo Flan, and Gavin Woods in 2025. Sure. I have no problem with that. That'd be fun. I was laughing because Charles is interacting. Yeah, you're talking about the bot, and you just got the report of the news, those types of things. My? Says who? You? People seem to love me. Is it possible to quantum proof crypto? Yes. It's called post-quantum crypto. There's many different approaches like learning with error and isogenies and hash-based crypto. Meckler went with us down to actually the Constitutional Convention, and he was an observer. And Mark's a great guy. And one of these days, we'll do a podcast together. That'd be a heck of a lot of fun. Maybe we can do it with Tucker. Any news about Crazy Mary? For those of you who don't know, is a beefalo. It's the only one I have in the ranch. Half buffalo, half cow. Big, mean, and crazy. Do you think the USA did mistakes to leave Afghanistan? Big respect for challenge because when you fight a war, you have to be very clear about what is the mission, why are we fighting the war, what are we prepared to do to win that war, what's the victory condition, what's the exit condition. Multi-nation effort with big armies crashing into each other like World War II? Is this more? There's a legitimate element that we can put back into power. Is this a nation building exercise where we're going to occupy the place and construct it for a long time? I mean, look at South Korea and Japan after World War II. Alongside U.S. Special Forces. And for the early days of the conflict, the goal was to find and kill Osama bin Laden and to disrupt the Taliban government and degrade its capabilities. Then it scaled up to a large collapsed. But the challenge with Afghanistan is it was never just Afghanistan, it was also Pakistan and to a certain extent other border nations like Iran and Azerbaijan. And is that when you have these border nations, they can harbor terrorist elements or elements of the prior regime. Pakistan is the biggest issue there. And so we're kind of fighting a three-sided war. You need to fight a 360. Fortunately, it was never able to win the hearts and minds of the people in Afghanistan. So we ended up getting into this endless link. And then year after year passed, more people died, more money spent, and eventually some president had to be the president who's the donkey, who basically pulls the plug and leaves. In the case of Vietnam, that was Nixon. Disastrous the conflict had been, and said, look, you can go another 10 years, but ultimately it's going to end the same way, in defeat. So it's a great case study in don't start things unless you're prepared to finish it. And Charles, there's no way you're only 37. I am. This is what crypto does to you. You lose your hair, beard gets white, belly gets big. It is what it is. Is my mic still on? Yeah, the mic is still on. Okay, there we go. Can you guys hear me now? No, it's on. The mic's on. No sound? No sound? Hello? Yeah, there we go. Yeah. There we go. It's fixed. Yeah, this is the integrated microphone. I was using my AnchorWorks microphone here, and unfortunately it didn't work because this new office I have up here in Gillette doesn't have a microphone set up yet. Yeah, you guys didn't lose me for 20 minutes. Come on. And there's the Angry Crypto Show. Good guy. Haven't heard much about Plutus recently. Yeah, just a lot of stuff under the hood. The Aiken people love to say that they save Cardano smart contracts and they've done all these amazing things. And it's kind of true that they've created something that's very usable that people really enjoy and like. And I think now 70% of all Cardano smart contracts, new contracts, are being written. But Plutus V3 just launched with zero knowledge capabilities, and a lot of people are utilizing those. And there's a litany of other capabilities that are coming online with V4, and a lot of great ideas that have come from the community as a whole. The thing is that UPLC is kind of the place you compile to And I don't really care if it's high assurance, Plutus, Aiken, or TypeScript. It's kind of a choose your own adventure. You want it to have a good DevX for the developer. And that developer may come from a functional background. They may come from an object-oriented background. They might be a kind of a web developer that's kind of HTML-ish, and they don't have a lot of coding skills. And in all those cases, you'd like to have a choose your own adventure and a path for them to get where they need to go. And it's nice that we now have some beginner stuff and intermediate stuff inside the ecosystem that doesn't really require you to be a domain expert in Haskell to do well and develop applications in Cardano. And it's getting easier and easier. Still some issues with logging and issues with concurrency, and it's there's all these edge cases that are challenging for people. And the goal of each version of Cardano, Plutus, is to kind of open up a large list of capabilities, and then typically at the surface language and library level, we can resolve those types of things. "10 years, and this guy's still making excuses." What excuses? That's the internet. That's the internet for you. Oh, you guys. Just once, I'd love for the criticism to be somewhat legitimate. It's like, well, you said this thing was going to happen. It didn't happen. And it's like, oh, okay, that's fair. But it's making excuses. Like, people write smart contracts in Cardano. They like Cardano. It works really well for lots of different things. And people build cool stuff every day. And if you go to Tap Tools or Dex Hunter or whatever, you can see, all the really cool, amazing things that have been built in the Cardano ecosystem and all the cool projects, and, to see that they're actually doing real and interesting stuff, and they're upgrading all the time. And, MinSwap upgraded and Sunday Swap upgraded. And, people are trying to keep up with all the new capabilities. And it's a very bright community filled with a lot of vibrant, young and passionate people. And that's why we're successful. And that's what keeps Cardano going and pushing Cardano through. And I'm kind of sad that they never get the credit that they deserve. When people criticize, they say Cardano just doesn't exist. Those people don't exist. Nothing exists. Nothing's been done. It's just a wallet. You say, have you ever actually spent a moment and used a Cardano dApp? I can't do that. It's not possible. A YouTuber told me it's not possible. Yeah, okay, but let's say you're wrong. Don't you think you're being a bit offensive to people who have spent years of their lives doing things? Well, I don't care, because the internet's no empathy. And it's a curious thing where even when you show them the evidence and you show them the dApps and you show them the infrastructure, they still keep saying the same stuff again and again. And I don't know why. Maybe, there's a trolling element to it. But when you meet these people, some cases they legitimately believe what they're saying. And then you try to figure out, where did they get the information from? Who are the purveyors of misinformation that are floating around? And I've always been trying to identify that, because I say, all right, well, what we'll do is we'll just go and on those shows and kick these guys in the teeth and say, this is what we do, and look how great we are. And unfortunately, we can never really isolate it. It is what it is. Did you lose some weight finally? Yeah, I'm working on it. It's a process. Can you share any new updates regarding your talks with Ripple? They're early days. We'd like to include Ripple in the Midnight ecosystem, and there are ongoing talks between the Midnight people and the Ripple people, and a lot of technological talks as well. And we've been trying to learn more about how their stack works. There's some Cardano tech we invented, in particular Marlowe, that would be tremendously useful with the Ripple ecosystem, and it would be a lot of fun to see what we can do there. And also, just some things in Ripple like Flare, for example, are pretty cool, pretty interesting. But, it takes time for these things to foment. And first step was just technical conversations. And that's what we did with David, who's been tremendously helpful and a great asset. And then at some point, once you've gotten beyond that, then there's actual integration work and other things to get done. But overall, they've been easy to work with. We met also with the real USD people. They were just finally got past launch, and they're trying to recover from that because that was an incredibly time-consuming effort, but we're really proud of them. And I do believe they're going to start adding other chains next year. And my recommendation to them was a self-serve model similar to Coinbase's Rosetta. It makes it a lot easier to see who's serious and who's not serious. But it would be fun to bring that into their orbit. There's no reason for us not to work together. Well, guess what? It's my space. So not only do I get to ban you, I get also to delete your comments. Goodbye. There we go. What temperature do you have your cold plunge? Do you air dry off for the shiver benefits? I mean, even if you don't air dry off, I got shit to do. It's about 1 to 2 Celsius, about 34 Fahrenheit. Yeah, this is the problem with the proof of work crowd. They just can't accept that there are alternative consensus algorithms. Really can't. Not much you can do, though. It's not an intellectual debate. You can sit down and say, let's have a conversation. Here's all the science. Here's all the code. And then it's, you're wrong, we're right. Okay, well, here's all the science. Here's all the code. Oh, no, you're wrong, you're right. Well, we've been running for 7 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nope, you're wrong, we're right. Okay, that's a religion. That's not a scientific argument. That's okay. I think it's time to go back to the old days and have some giraffe pictures on the wall and some giraffes behind you. I just got to get a stable home. I've been building like crazy in a lot of different areas, and it'd be good to actually get to my home again. I've been living in temporary homes for a while. But it would be, I agree. How do you like Gillette? I love the people of Gillette. Gillette as a town is a little tough. The restaurant selection leaves a lot to be desired. Hopefully we'll be able to improve that. And it gets very cold, and the wind is quite brutal. It can be negative 40 and 100-mile-an-hour wind. I've seen birds freeze to death in the trees. That's cold. So Gillette can be quite challenging. Midnight is a CNT houses its own blockchain because it's the dual token model. It has 2 tokens. One that lives on the partner chain and one that lives on Cardano. Been saying it for 2 years now. There's a 2 token model. So there's a Cardano anchor, and it has a consumption token, a capacity unit that lives on the sidechain. That's why it benefits Cardano so much. And actually, because it's a CNT, you have to build all this stuff for CNTs and actually get the custodians to support it and the wallets to support it, which has been a tremendous issue. But we're pushing through. It'll cost $20 million plus. Should have been done years ago. If only there was an entity that was responsible for that. Go figure. Is what it is. Is Cardano doomed now that it has a foundation issue? No, Cardano's built in granite. There is no little drama or foundation issue that can cause a problem. It just slows certain things down. It means certain people have to work harder, or it takes a little longer to get things where they need to be. But we're not doomed. Cardano's Cardano. It's always going to be here, and it's kept alive by the passion of the countless thousands who really, really care and fight hard for it. It's just they're adults, and they need to be told the truth, and they need to be told what's going on. And you let people make decisions accordingly. And I don't think for a moment it's going to slow anything down. I doubt this guy has ever seen a Cardano developer in person. Of all the people, I'm probably the one who actually has, right? But you bring up an interesting point. It would be nice if the Cardano developers actually went to, and many do, but not in a coordinated, organized effort, places like Token 2049 and Consensus. It'd be fun to bring them all there and get them coming. And I think there's a path to make such things happen. It's just, for some reason, we don't quite, as an ecosystem, invest in that. And I think that's something that we can correct in 2025. Do you think the drones in New Jersey are really aliens? I mentioned in a Twitter space what I thought the drones were. I thought about it for a while, and I talked to a few people that I know who are close to these types of things. And, the first things first, U.S. airspace. So the United States of America is one of the best guarded places in the world. And if you, as a foreign power, show up with large drones and enter our airspace, we're going to know about it, and we're going to fly sorties and shoot them down. Look at the balloon that China sent over. People criticize the fact that it took a few days to shoot it down, but the reality is that's just what we do. We're very good at destroying things. Now, if these are private drones invading airspace around airports and facilities that are mission critical, there are capabilities to shoot those down in the local law enforcement. So the fact that they're flying around without any fear means that they're government assets. They belong to the U.S. government. Now, typically when the U.S. government would fly those types of assets at night, they would file a flight plan with the FAA. And the FAA would say, okay, well, what type of test you're doing and when you're doing it. Even if it's not a statutory requirement in all cases, they would do so as a courtesy for safety reasons, to alert other pilots that there's a restricted airspace, there's going to be a type of aircraft flying in, and avoid those areas for these times because there's a chance of collision. Because nobody wants to be in a situation where a military aircraft hits a civilian aircraft and kills somebody. That instantly means court-martials and investigations and all these things. So typically speaking, if it's an exercise or a test of a new capability, there'll be a mechanism upon which the airspace can be closed. And almost certainly they would not test experimental new things over highly populated civilian areas. They would do so in areas that are low population density, like Utah and Nevada and Wyoming, because your probability of an incident is very low. Also, in some cases, you don't really want to do this in a public way, so you fly it over low population density because you tend not to be seen for those types of operations. So that means it's a government asset, and they're not doing a test. It's a real life scenario. So why would you fly a drone low over densely populated civilian areas that's a government asset at night? Well, if you fly during the daytime, you have better visibility, but the sun does interfere with a very specific type of sensor, radiation sensors. So if you're flying low as a drone over a highly populated area during the nighttime with a military asset, you're probably looking for a radioactive source. And they're flying in patterns that would give them the ability to triangulate. You notice those triangles, kind of like GPS, where they always have three. So there's a good possibility that what's going on is there's some nuclear source that U.S. drones are looking for in a densely populated area. It could be a nuclear weapon or a dirty bomb. And that would also explain why they wouldn't talk about it publicly, because it would incite a panic. If you lived in New York or New Jersey and you heard that the U.S. government is looking for a dirty bomb or a nuclear weapon, it would scare the hell out of you. And it would cause a lot of people to evacuate and run for the hills. So keep it under wraps. So then there's an open question, what could that be? And what I've heard is that in 1994, when Ukraine and Russia reached an agreement for the Ukrainian nuclear stockpile to return to Russia, there were about 1,600 nuclear weapons and nuclear-like weapons that were returned, but some people say that 40 to 50 were not returned and were actually held on by the Ukrainian government as kind of an insurance policy, just in case they got invaded and they were lost in the translation. So then the natural question is, if you were to lose some nuclear weapons, where would you hide them? Where would you put them? Well, Chernobyl actually makes an incredibly good case because the background radiation makes it really hard to actually locate any nuclear payload. And you just bury them somewhere in Chernobyl, and they're quite hard to find at that point. So here's an interesting thing. In 2022, when Putin invaded Ukraine, he attacked Chernobyl and sent his troops there, and they were digging in the exclusion zone, disturbing highly radioactive soil, which is a pretty absurd thing because the Russians have a pretty good understanding of Chernobyl because they built everything up there and they did all the reclamation. And there's still people alive in Russia who deeply understand the nuclear exclusion zone. And that's a really bad idea to dig. So why did the Russians go to a desolate nuclear excluded zone right after they invaded the country and started digging around looking for something? Well, maybe they believed there were weapons there. And the word on the street is one of them is missing and it got smuggled in. That's what the conspiracy theory people say. But it would line up perfectly with a drone situation where the drones are actually looking for something like that. But the truth is we don't know. And the problem is bigger than just a missing nuclear weapon and a drone. It's more of a systemic paranoia, apathy, and cynicism about the US government. We have a situation where the president-elect is suspicious of the incumbent president, and there's zero coordination or discussion about this issue. When Trump was at a press conference and they asked him about the drones, he said, I don't know what they are, they don't tell me, and I do know that they know more than what they're saying. It's inconceivable that the president and the president-elect don't coordinate on things. And if the president-elect wanted to know about something, they'd simply tell him. Because he's the president-elect, he'll be in charge of the country next month. And they all have to work together on transition. The fact that they're not, it's a pretty strange situation. And it invites rampant speculation, aliens, and government conspiracies, and chemtrails, and all this stuff, and testing new drones to hurt people. Because, everybody's just so angry and suspicious. And I just put some dots together that gives you a plausible story. It could be anything else. Who knows? And it could be aliens. Who knows? Nobody knows. And then you see stuff online. You don't know if it's real or not. Why? Because all those things you see online, generative AI is a thing now. And it's ridiculously easy to create forgeries that look very convincing. People spread them, and then it's choose your own adventure. People believe what they want to believe. If you want to believe it's a nuclear weapon, you have a story now. If you want to believe it's aliens, there's another story you can find. If you want to believe it's alt-right conspiracy theorists doing this just to distract people, you have another story. Or perhaps you could believe the Biden administration's doing it to create a news cycle to not have people pay attention to all the pardons that he did, the Hunter Biden pardon. Who knows? Or maybe it's a foreign power. In which case, why is the U.S. military not intervening? Well, maybe they're cooperating with the foreign power. Maybe we've been co-opted. This is the problem in society when you have no anchors to give you trust, and you have no ability to connect to something of objective meaning. And you just get lost in a maelstrom of chaos. And even when the real story comes out, you won't be able to verify it. And it'll just be one of several narratives that compete with each other. That's the sad part of it. What is your best preferred steak? I'd say there's two steaks that I really enjoyed. One was from Fogon down in Argentina that was cooked in the very traditional asado style. And oh my Lord, it's absolutely amazing. The other one I really like is Scotch Prime over at the Palm in Las Vegas. They have this amazing Wagyu sampler called Wagyu Flight from 4 different regions. And both of those are exceedingly well cooked. They're very, very good. You think it's important to educate high school students about cryptocurrency? How would you incorporate this in the math and business course? Not particularly. I think it's important to teach them about economics, actual real economics, like Austrian economics and game theory and some of the precursors that lead into the cryptocurrency space. And then crypto makes natural sense. You say, well, wait a second here. Why should the government be in the business of money? And teach them what debt's about, how credit works, how the world banking system works, and for that matter, how the internet works. 99% of those graduating from high school don't know anything about any of those topics and have no incentive to know anything about any of those topics. So if you teach them about cryptocurrencies and they don't have those underlying foundations, what have you done? You've created a reality where all they view cryptocurrencies as is a speculative medium. They don't understand why they exist. So as a teenager, what are you going to see? Dog with hat. You're going to see Doge. You're going to see number go up, number go down. And you get caught up in that meme culture of it. And that's fine. But the problem is that you don't understand that there's actually more to the story than that. And then some make money, vast majority lose money. And then eventually they just start hating it because they hate anything after 6 months. Because that's contrarian viewpoint. So you have to get the underlying first principles in. And once you get those underlying first principles, then it's very natural. They don't teach taxes or money, so they're not going to teach crypto. That's correct. Would you go on the Lex Friedman podcast again? Yeah, if Lex invites me. He's doing different things these days. I don't think he's in that crypto surge, but he'll come back to crypto. Markets are up. He'll be there. I do more than crypto these days, you know. But Lex is a good guy. What are your thoughts on the Doge team with Elon and Vivek? You know, Elon makes sense to me. He's very interested in this topic. He wants to, cut the U.S. government. He doesn't have any time. He spends an enormous amount of time playing Diablo 4 and running like 26 companies and having 20 children and all this other stuff. So the reality is more a philosophy guy and a delegator in chief. And then there's a question, is Vivek Ramaswamy the appropriate person to delegate to? At this scale and with the skill sets required for hyper efficiency and having no bullshit, you need the odd couple. If I was Trump and wanted to do this, what I would have done is I would have picked Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and had them come together. And Jeff is a ruthless and merciless optimizer in chief. You see this in Amazon, like the delivery trucks. They have only a certain amount of time to deliver the package, a certain amount of time to use the bathroom. I mean, it's very intrusive how much efficiency Amazon puts into their system. And he's just a relentless guy. And, he's also a very powerful guy and one of the very few people that actually can counterbalance Elon Musk. Musk has a space company. Bezos does too. Musk is worth over $200 billion. Bezos is as well. Musk is a software guy. Bezos is as well. They're like, mortal enemies, and it's an odd couple. And they don't have to see eye to eye, but they both do agree that the U.S. government can go into a tremendous degree of improvement in optimization. The other thing is that Bezos is more of a creature of the left and Musk is a creature of the right. And so by having them together, Doge appears to be more bipartisan. Vivek Ramaswamy is an amplifier. You take Vivek and Trump, and it amplifies Trump. You take Musk and Vivek and amplifies Musk. It just takes what Musk wants to do and broadcasts it louder and very articulately. And that's important in many cases, especially when you have people that have trouble communicating themselves, like Ron Paul is a great example, who's a philosopher king, but he was not a very effective campaigner, all things considered. So he carried the message through, but he had trouble delivering the message. Malay has the same viewpoints, but he can deliver the message. When you listen to his speeches, they're mesmerizing. And the guy is incredibly charismatic. So, Vivek would amplify Ron and be tremendously effective in that. Musk doesn't need amplification. In fact, he's oversaturated. He's touching every part of the American experience with Twitter and all the other stuff that he's done. So really, you need somebody there to counterbalance the excesses of Musk and to act as a check and balance. And had that been done, all these rumors of Musk running the U.S. government and being in charge of everything, no one would even say that. They'd say, well, Trump is clearly in charge. So I do think that the landing was bungled. But that said, I do believe that Doge will be somewhat effective. And I think that, it'll actually be able to cut a lot of stuff. If anything, it'll create some notoriety in a lot of things that should not be happening. For example, we should not have giant bills that are filled with pork that no one's read be passed every year. So just maybe we should use all this artificial intelligence and crowdsource the reading of legislation, because the American people are more than capable of doing that, and we can do a very good job of that. We shouldn't have 16 intelligence agencies. We do. Maybe we should have 5 or less. Who knows? We shouldn't have so much redundancy in the U.S. government and lose on a regular basis billions of dollars with no accountability behind it. If you can put a spotlight on that and force some resolution of that, I think Doge will be tremendously effective. When designer babies are artificial womb factories. So Exo Wombs are being developed. I know some people that are personally involved in the development of them right now on the animal side, but also it's a huge market for humans. We kind of know how to do it. It's just one of those things where there's a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot. So I think somewhere in the early 2030s, Exo Wombs will come online, and they're tremendously useful. Let's say you're a 50-year-old woman, and you were a career woman, and or something like that. And then your husband died or you got divorced, and then you married a much younger guy. He's 25 and you want to have kids, and you can't because you're too old. Well, actually, with an Exo Womb, you may be able to do that. And people are living a lot longer. The average life expectancy at the turn of the 19th, 20th century was less than 60. And now people born in the 21st century have a good chance to die at 100. So to say your window for children should be biologically determined and you're only allowed to have them at 25, but you can't have them at 50, well, you get an extra 20 years or 30 years. So the math works out exactly the same as it did in the 19th century. And the advantage of Exo Wombs is not only can you have them, you also can edit the genome so that the birth defect issue goes completely away. So it's going to happen. It's just a question of how many edits are you allowed to make and how does the FDA get involved in these types of things. Certain administrations ebb and flow. With Kennedy and with Trump, I doubt that we'll see approval during this administration. But I do believe the technology will first be used in the agricultural business. And actually, I'd love to use it myself for a variety of animals that I'd like to mass manufacture that have great agricultural utility, because we do a lot of synthetic biology work, and this would be really cool. The leap to grow to humans is 5 to 10 years after it becomes regularly used in the agricultural business, and AI will assist in the editing. Respect God's creation, no to Exo Wombs. You say that, but what if you were born with a birth defect and you can't have kids? So is that fair? You just told, hey, sorry, everybody else in your age group gets to have children, but you can't. You just suck it up, buttercup. Your line dies with you. You never get to know motherhood. It's just adopt. It is a valuable thing, but it's a fundamentally different experience. So I don't believe that. I think human beings are allowed to upgrade. We just, as a culture, need to have the wisdom to understand when and how that's appropriate. Life is unfair sometimes, and that's the point of technology and social progress. We take the things that we used to have to accept as unfair, and we say, not anymore. We're just not going to accept that anymore. A long time in all the totality of human existence, infectious diseases and cancer were just things that would just always kill you, and there was nothing you could do about it. You just had to accept it. Then medicine cures these things, and we say, okay, social progress. For a long, long time, certain groups of people were marginalized and disenfranchised. Women couldn't vote. Women couldn't participate in the political process. And they say, that's just a fact of life. You have to accept that. We changed it. So life is unfair, but that doesn't mean you have to be tolerant of the unfairness. You just go and fix it. And that's the magic of these things. And yes, every time you fix it, you can overdo it. That's communism. It's a bit of social overdo it. Terrible and bad, don't do that. And in medicine, you can overdo it as well. And many movements have been problematic that have done that. But that doesn't excuse the entire endeavor. Charles, you are immoral. Glad you don't run the show. Who defines morality? You? Your God? Which one? And how do you really know you're actually following God's law? How do you know? In your heart, he told you, had a personal conversation. So your subjective experience defines all morality for all people. Is it moral to wear this? What if this material was made by a child? I didn't know, but it was, maybe, who knows? And what if that person was a slave? There's 100 million slaves. Just by purchasing this, I've perpetuated an institution that's harmed children. I don't know. Could have happened. Maybe. Kind of, sort of. This is made out of silver. Where was the silver mined? What if in the process of mining that silver, the silver polluted the water and it created a birth defect and someone's suffering now for the rest of their life by buying the silver? Am I culpable for that? Don't know. It's difficult to say. Morality is anything but objective. It is a very, very difficult topic. And God's not going to help you figure these things out. When you mislead millions of people who hang on every word you say, you're moral by anyone's standards. So what did I say that misleaded them? What was the misled? Roll it on out there, Juggalo. Come on, tell me. What was that? You have the whole audience here. It's your chance to right this wrong. And let everybody know. You see binary code in the fabric of life? No. Binary code is equivalent to the same encoding that we do in DNA. DNA is the encoding of life. It's pretty much everywhere. You promised me girth. You have to take all 10 of the pills. Did Phil Wadler retire? No, Phil Wadler is still around. Just got done writing a book. He's part of the Royal Society now, and he's actually heading over this next year to the Hoskinson Center to learn about lean. He still has that boyish charm about him. Any Mayo Clinic collaboration plan for your clinic and stem cell programs? We work with the Buck Institute and a collection of different universities, but eventually we'll add in a lot more academic partners. It'd be fun to do something with Mayo, especially on the cancer side when we set up an oncology program. We don't have one yet. Will IOHK work with David Sachs? There's an inevitability behind it. We'll figure it out. Thoughts on Aptos? Would be nice to meet the new management. We'll probably do a space or something with them. I'm always interested in meeting these guys. It's like there's always pairings. So last cycle was Harmony won and Solana won. And this cycle it's Sui and Aptos. It looks like Sui is winning, and the odd man out gets a little pissed off because they have all these great people and great technology, and they try to find a way to kind of make up lost distance. So now for us, it was Algorand and Tezos and Cardano led the pack. But, it's a reset every cycle. So new cycle, here we are. I do have a college degree, but you just, there you go. Yeah, well, congratulations. You're banned and deleted. After all 10 pills, I couldn't get to the bottom of a tuna can, but blew out the sides. Oh, that's funny. Charles, did you do any work with Alzheimer's? My mom was recently diagnosed with that. I'm sorry to hear that. There's a few things we're looking at. There's an infusion that we're looking at that cleans out the amyloid plaques. And then also we're looking at photobiomodulation therapies. And we'll see what we can do there. It's a challenging disease, but there's kind of a cascading series of events. Inflammation in certain vasculature regions of the brain seem to promote the buildup of plaques and other problems, and then that leads to cell death and long-term dysfunction. So by the time you get diagnosed, there's already a lot of damage. And so the question is, you just clean out the plaques, does that resolve the issue, or do you have to do more? And I think some combination of stem cells, hyperbarics, photobiomodulation, and therapies to remove the plaques probably could help a heck of a lot. And we do have one trial we're doing with photobiomodulation for dementia patients using the Vilite, and we've had some good results there. And when we get the hyperbaric center fully operational, then we'll be able to combine that with other therapeutic interventions. The challenge is that the stem cell interventions we're looking at, it's not intrinsically clear with what level of fidelity do they cross the blood-brain barrier. We don't know yet. So they need to be SPEO-tagged or fluoresced, and then we can actually see when and how, under what circumstances are they crossing the blood-brain barrier. Sorry to hear that, though. My grandfather died of Alzheimer's. It was tough. Hey, Charles, when do you foresee productization integration of Bitcoin OS? Usually people are using Bitcoin OS as a stand-in for Bitcoin DeFi. So Bitcoin OS is a particular product, and Ed Anyago is working on that with his team. We wish them well, and hopefully it brings Bitcoin DeFi to Cardano. Bitcoin DeFi integration, though, is something we take very seriously. We're working with a company called Fairgate, and we have a whole team on it. And I hope by May, at the Bitcoin 2025 conference, we'll have something significant to show along those lines. Hoskinson contracting pay good? Yes, sir, it does. Do you think a Russia-phobic attitude is conducive to global prospects? Well, there's this chip on the shoulder that the Russian people, the Russian government seem to have. They say, oh, everything Russian's being criticized. What do we do? Well, you guys kind of did run an empire in the 20th century that killed 200 million people. That happened. It's a fact. It was called the Soviet Union. And Chernobyl happened, and ethnic cleansing happened, and gulags happened. And there's some hard feelings floating around the world, and if America was to collapse, I guarantee you there'd be plenty of people floating around who get pretty upset about what America's done historically. When you run an empire, whether you're China, Russia, or the United States, you have to stay strong to evade criticism. And if you get periods of weakness, then the criticism gets higher. You also did this other thing. It was called invade Ukraine. And whether you think it was justified because of NATOification of the East or not, that killed over 1 million people. The Ukrainians didn't invade Russia. The Russians invaded Ukraine. And when you do that, when you kill 1 million people, and boy, it did happen because I have offices in Ukraine. I had in Kharkiv, and they're gone now. There's going to be a blowback, and understandably so. And I don't want to blame the Russian people for the decisions that a dictator who controls the Russian people makes. I have many friends in Russia, in St. Petersburg and Moscow and other places. I studied mathematics. It's unavoidable that some of your friends are mathematicians and they happen to come from Russia or live in Russia. And the Haskell community has a lot of prominent Russians in it. Crypto community has a lot of prominent Russians. Ergo was created by a Russian. Alex Cherpanoy, who's a good friend of mine, and did a lot of the great work in Russia there. And it broke my heart when the diplomacy went to hell, because it was very easy to work with and talk to and build relationships with people from Russia. Lex Friedman is a very affable guy from Russia. There's good people, very good people. But it doesn't excuse what's happened. And it doesn't excuse the fact that there's nothing to stop what happened from happening again. There's nothing to stop Putin from invading another country, like Georgia, for example. Really is nothing. He just decide to go do it. There's nothing to stop them from killing another 1 million people. And so the international community is trying to figure out how to resolve and handle this situation. And it's a tough situation. And it's not a hypothetical academic reality. It's a lived reality for tens of millions of people right now who are suffering. And they live under an enormous amount of uncertainty. And they don't even know what the flag of their country is going to be after the conflict is over. So that's why there's a Russia-phobic attitude. Just like there was a US-phobic attitude when we invaded Iraq. And a lot of countries took deep offense to it, especially in the Middle East. And it created a lot of political ill will. That's what happens when you have an empire and your empire invades people. You have to own that. You get all the upside of empire. Get the political power, you get the strong passport, you get all the trade, get the low cost of goods, you get the good education system, you get the good transportation, you get the cultural diversity, because as you conquer people, you integrate them and you get all their cultures and ideas. But then the downside is that when you screw up and you do bad things and you hurt people, then the rest of the world reacts accordingly. There's a yin with a yang. Yes. From Patrick Tobler. Hey, Charles, would you say you're competing with a community project created by your own Cardano Bitcoin bridge after seeing Bitcoin S and seeing them work together with Fluid Tokens, Maestro, and other teams? I wouldn't say that. I mean, we're building general purpose infrastructure, and that infrastructure can be used by anybody. It's just, I don't like working with partners where they say one thing, they do another thing. And I don't really understand how Cardano comes out ahead when Bitcoin OS, after they integrate with us, will simply integrate with dozens of other ecosystems. And the minute that another ecosystem looks more attractive, all the marketing shifts over there. At the end of the day, Bitcoiners are Bitcoiners. I know them very well. I lived in that ecosystem for a long time. Started the Bitcoin Education Project. And there's one thing I know about Bitcoiners. They love Bitcoin first and forever and foremost. And so if your business strategy is to enter in with a token and say, hey, we have this token and you have to use our token under the hood in order for your Bitcoin stuff to work, they will say that's not Bitcoin. They want to be able to click a button that says Bitcoin to DeFi Bitcoin, pay transaction fees in Bitcoin, interact with dApps with Bitcoin, and then when they're done, go back to Bitcoin. Now, under the hood, there can be Babel fees and wrapping and all this other stuff that goes on. That's all Cardano jiu-jitsu and magic. But in the wallet, it's only Bitcoin. And if you're there, I think you'll actually be very successful. And you'll get a lot of adoption and excitement within the Bitcoin ecosystem. But remember, this ecosystem criticized ordinals. There. And so here's the other problem with Bitcoin OS is that the white paper says a lot of stuff, but under the hood, cryptographically speaking, not all that stuff is done and tested. There aren't really good security proofs. There's really not an end-to-end design that showcases how to do this well. And that was one of the things we brought to the table. We have the scientists, we have the engineers, we know how to write cryptographic proofs, we know how to belt and suspenders everything so that these bridges don't get damaged. Because let's be real here. Anytime assets move from one blockchain to another blockchain, that is a point of attack. And we've witnessed literally billions of dollars in hacks. Billions. In fact, the only time I've ever lost money in the cryptocurrency space from a hack was the Nomad bridge being hacked and the wrapped coins that were sent over from the Ethereum ecosystem being stolen on that side. It's the only time I ever lost any money. It was a bridge hack. So this is the single most important bridge we're building in 2025. And we have to be 100% certain that it has a great user experience, 100% certain that it has rigorous cryptography behind it, 100% certain that it operates at a reasonable cost, and also that it's really easy for wallets to integrate in. Now, you referenced Maestro. I own part of Maestro. I'm an investor. We know that team really well, and we think they're great guys. We also know the Block Frost guys because they're part of the family. We know a lot of the other dApps. And here's the thing is when you create an integration, we're going to work and make sure that the development model makes sense, the cryptography makes sense, that the bridge mechanisms look good, and there's an easy way to integrate this into wallets. And Lace will have that integration. We'll go talk to Vesper and all the other people and find a way to make sure that that integration gets done. And then the Bitcoin wallets and do the same. And that can be done in 2025. It's an enormous amount of work. The teams have to really push aggressively. There's going to be a layering of different technologies because it's not a panacea. The claims that are being made that it's instant and amazing and all these things are great, it's not completely true. And there's a lot more work that needs to be done to create a good user experience. But that's our expertise. That's what we do for a living. We're not as good at the consumer products, but we're really good at the cryptography. We're really good at writing papers. We're really good at understanding what's real and what's not real and building things that stand the test of time, as evidenced by world wars. And if that's the foundation upon which people want to build on top of, they're well more than welcome to do that. And here's the thing, it's an open ecosystem. And people can do whatever the heck they want to do in an open ecosystem. They choose any standard that they want. And there are a lot of good standards out there, especially with wrapped Bitcoin. And there's a lot of people like Rosenbridge and Wan Chain and others, and they're doing good work, and they have great trust assumptions for the most part for many users. And there are other people that they want trustless recursive setups, and they want things to be completely validated on chain and Bitcoin to do things. But I said, look, Bitcoin's going to be part of the story of Cardano now forever. And it would behoove us as core developers not to get involved in that. Learn more about Bitcoin script, learn about the design of BitVMX, write a compiler for Aiken to RISC-V, which is the core of BitVMX, so that you can transpile Bitcoin script and also to UPLC with one pipeline. Write once, run everywhere. That was what made Node so remarkably successful. Your JavaScript worked on the front and the back, and it was just JavaScript everywhere. So Aiken everywhere, for example. These are some of the things we consider and we think about. And then you also have to think about cross-chain communication. So how does the Bitcoin side communicate with the Cardano side? And under what circumstances do you need to do that? Talking about a liquidity pool, or are you talking about just a multi-chain signature? There's a litany of considerations that come into the way people think. And then also, what use cases are you talking about? Restaking, lending, DEXs, et cetera, et cetera. Each of them carry different user flows and different requirements. So it's a broad conversation, and Cardano DeFi is going to be involved every step of the way in this conversation. But I can't put my fingerprints on it, my seal on it, till I know that the cryptography works. And I'm very confident in the security model. Because at the end of the day, if we build something and a year down the road, there's $1 billion worth of Bitcoin in it and it gets hacked and all the money's stolen, that's a catastrophe that will badly damage Cardano's credibility and probably end Cardano's ability to be the DeFi layer of Bitcoin. It'll go somewhere else, and it'll take many years for the brand to recover. So this is not something that you half-ass or rush, and it's not something you write a white paper. You say, I've written the white paper, it's done. You need evidence and proof. You need an adversarial model. You need the application of formal methods in the process of building these. And you need to have absolute certainty that you know you're doing. And you have to layer multiple solutions together as a belt and suspenders. And so when you put those things, then and only then do I think works. Now, the counter argument is, well, we need to move really quickly. The bull market is here and we have to get these things done. Okay, well, the introduction point of this to the Bitcoin community is going to be Bitcoin 2025. That's May. I don't know a better place to do that. And I don't think that that's like super slow. If it's now in 5 months, that's pretty fast. And these are the OGs who are working on this. We're not white labeling the technology. We're going to the source and blending both sides together to get these things done. And also, we're now a member of the community, as I have been reminded repeatedly about. We're no longer IO, and then there's the community. There's now just one community, just one, Patrick. And we're part of that community. So there's competition inside the community for hearts and minds, just like there's min swap versus Sunday swap. So there's alternative approaches, and people can decide what approaches that they like. And they can make decisions accordingly. And if there's a phobia to working with IO, fine. They'd have to be specific about what the issue is. Hundreds of white papers peer-reviewed by Hoskinson himself, making them all meaningless. You speak of things you know nothing about. Do you know what crypto is? Do you know what Eurocrypt is? Do you know what CCS is? Do you know any of these conferences? No, you don't. And thus you get banned. Banned and delete, and you're gone. Goodbye. Goodbye. Are you familiar with Whitney Webb? Yeah, I actually thought about suing her. So Whitney Webb is somebody in the alt-right sphere, and the problem with these journalists is they start connecting dots that aren't there, and then they start saying things that are not only inappropriate, they're slanderous and libelous. So to bring people up to speed, Whitney is claiming that our involvement in Ethiopia is in partnership with SingularityNet and basically part of a New World Order conspiracy to harvest children for Epstein or something Epstein-like. She said this with no evidence. She said this with absolutely no idea what she's talking about. And it's gotten to a point where, because she's repeated it multiple times, she would meet the definition of somebody we could sue. And we've considered it. Just we're busy and there's things going on. But I take these things very seriously. You know, we worked very closely with the Department of Education, the Ministry of Education in Ethiopia, to do a program where we tried to get K through 12 students to have DID credentials, self-sovereign identity. That was a deal that we made a lot of fanfare about. We signed years ago. It was a very difficult deal, and there's a blog post we posted about how it ended up, where we were able to get some students on, but the war was very challenging, and we couldn't get where we needed to go with it. Now, one of our partners, SingularityNet, had an office in Addis Ababa. And the Epstein connection apparently comes that Hanson Robotics, a firm that built some of the robots that Ben Gortzel does, got some money from one of Epstein's many foundations years ago. There's no material connection. There's no Lolita Express. There's no island. There's none of these things. But her logic is that because we know Ben, because he also had an office in Addis Ababa, that apparently Ben is working for Epstein or his people, and we're collaborating then with Ben to get those children into a system where we can identify everything so that they can then be harvested for adrenochrome or whatever the hell she thinks they're harvesting for. It's dangerous to say these types of things because not only are they not true, some people who believe these things actually take action and they try to kill you. I have to defend you. You're part of the New World Order. Oh no, I'm a WEFer. I've been exceedingly critical of WEF and Klaus Schwab and all these people in this inner circle. Exceedingly so. I went to Davos once. I was disgusted with it. Despite the fact that I've been invited multiple times to go back, I chose not to because I don't like who these people are and what they do. But in Whitney's world, I work for them. And she can believe that till the cows come home. But you can't say that we're harvesting data from Ethiopian children so that they can be preyed upon by sex predators. You just can't say that. It's illegal. And it's a crime. And at some point, we probably will sue her and we'll win and destroy her reputation. And rightfully so, you know, because this is just not okay for people to say these types of things. The only reason we haven't done it is just time. It just takes time to put these things together. But, you know, eventually. And that just makes me sad, too, because I don't know why people do these types of things. You know, same issue with Alex Jones and Sandy Hook or, you know, any of these other stuff. They conflate propaganda with reality. And eventually they cross thresholds and then they spend the rest of their career trying to walk it back, but they've already caused grievous harm. This guy is a man-child. And we're also going to ban and delete you too. There you go. Very man-child response. I like Kyle, but his criticism of you in regards to Lucem and found a connection to Epstein pissed me off. By the way, how do I have a connection to Epstein too? That's the thing that they can never do. I'm 37 years old. When Epstein was finally caught I was in my early 20s, and I was a nobody. Wasn't a prominent academic, as I'm often reminded. Didn't have any money. Didn't have any social status. I lived in Colorado, not in Harvard, any of these places. But somehow magically, we're all in the same fucking club. Grow the hell up, you alt-right pieces of garbage. You're trash. You're just human trash. You know, there are consequences to the things you say. And when you go out there and you affiliate people with monsters and try to equate them to be monsters, and you know deep in your heart it's bullshit, you're scum. You're absolute human scum. You know, and this, if I didn't have a security detail, if I didn't take precautions to ensure my own safety, at some point I'd get shot over it by a lunatic. That's what you people do. You create these realities. You create these circumstances where crazy people take advantage of it and they go and harm people. You know, and for the rest of my life as a public figure, I just endure you. And I'm so glad we have libel laws and slander laws. And when you go out and you say these unfounded things, at some point you will get sued and you will lose. Just like Trump sued, CBS or NBC? He's suing them all. And he just won $10 million in one suit. He's got another one on the way. Because you just can't say stuff and say, well, you know, there's no consequences. There are consequences for these things. It's not okay. Charles, what's your favorite barbecue sauce? I'll tell you what my favorite barbecue is. That's Wayne's Smoke Shack. If you are in Louisville, go to Wayne's Smoke Shack. Wonderful place. The best is the candied pork belly. Quite good. Yeah, this is not just haters. This actually shows that have millions of people watching them. You know, Whitney was just some person, but when she goes onto a show that has an audience of 2 to 3 million people and broadcasts that to 2 to 3 million people, you start getting to a point where you're saying that's too much and it's too far. You know, the threshold is if it's on X, it's the it of the internet. These things propagate and spread, you ignore them. When it goes into organized media and it gets into a threshold of organized media at a scale of 7 to 8 figures people, that's the point where you actually have to comment on it, say, we want a retraction. You know, we can't do this. What words of wisdom do you have for those of us who see gaslighting from all sides? AI is your friend. Every single thing you see, have a Claude account, an OpenAI account, Perplexity, before you take it at face value. If it's interesting and controversial, load that information in and have it fact-checked by the AI as a starting point. Now, I'm not telling you to wholesale accept the answer. What I am doing is saying what this does for you is adds nuance into the conversation. For example, if somebody said 86% of children who got the vaccine developed cancer, that's a huge statement, right? Well, you should have some skepticism there because you think to yourself, hang on a second here. Well, if the majority of children got the vaccine and they're saying 86% develop cancer, shouldn't we have like all the cancer wards in America be pediatric cancer wards be overloaded with children? And you'll always know somebody's like, well, my kid got cancer. That's true, but let's take a step back. Let's be rational about this. And let's just try to think critically about it. What the AI will do is say, well, okay, well, if that was to be true, here are the set of things that have to be true for that to be true. The causality. So always ask that question. What would have to be true for what I've just been told to be true? So if somebody says, I have a standing water in my basement, think to yourself, what would have to be true for that statement to be true? Okay, well, a pipe broke. That could be a hypothesis. there was a rainstorm and it leaked into the basement. That could be a hypothesis. But there had to have been some source of water that got into the basement. Now, if that person lives in the Sahara Desert and there hasn't been a rain in that area of the Sahara in 30 years, and that day that they said there's standing water there, it's no water. And you say, okay, well, I know it wasn't a natural cause, so it might have to be an artificial cause. So that person had to have had water in that area. There has to be an oasis. There has to be a well. You're following the critical thinking. So AI can help you sort these things out. You say, okay, well, here are the GPS coordinates. Can you find the sources of water nearby there? And also give the scenario and start walking through, what could be. The point is that it's a thinking tool, and it helps you reason about whether something you've been told is credible or not credible. It gives you the ability to kind of work your way through a scenario for feasibility. And at some point, you'll run up against the wall, and then you just have to make a decision with all the available facts that I have, I want to believe this or not. And then if you really want to believe something, is it because the facts have persuaded you, or is it because your worldview is compatible with this? I believe that Joe Biden is a piece of shit. I believe that for a long time, based upon his behaviors, based upon what he's done to America, based upon his time in the Senate, based upon what he's done to his own family. Now, because of that, anytime I see any negative news about Joe Biden, I know for a fact that I'm much more likely to accept it at face value, even if it's not true. So recently, all these reports came out that Biden's staff apparently knew that he has dementia, and they were hiding for him. Now, I believe that was probably the case. So it's very easy for me when I see a story like that, because of my worldview and biases and my dislike for the person and the culture that he leads, to say to myself, oh, that's probably true, without even reading the article. What if the people who said these things made it up? Isn't America a place where you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty? And the liberals listening, anything you hear about Trump that's negative, deep down inside, you probably just believe it, face value. Really, it's just part of you. And he's a piece of shit. Hate this guy. And so, I heard he smells. That was actually articles that were written in the courtroom. People said that Donald Trump smells bad. And just people believed it. They started saying it. Small hands. How many of you actually shook Trump's hand and seen his hand in person? But apparently you just believe he has small hands because the inference is he has a small penis. And they just wanted to populate that, piss him off. That's what people do. So what AI does is it's this amazing MacGuffin that allows you to kind of return to an objective slate of conversation. In the process of returning to that, it helps you break out of that cognitive trap that you're in, that your worldview is jading your belief on certain things. And two things can be true at the same time. People you hate can do good things, and people you love can do bad things. Just that simple. People are nuanced. Humans are nuanced. And it's entirely possible that the worst person in the world did something good in their life. And it's entirely possible that a saint did something bad. So AI helps you sort that out. And I think that helps also resolve the gaslighting as well, because once you've determined what you're seeing is problematic, meaning that it's likely not true and it was packaged in some way, then you have to ask the next step, who benefits from somebody believing that this is true? Who benefits? Who's making money? Who's getting power? Who's losing money? Who's losing power? There's always that question you have to ask. Who benefits from that belief? And who doesn't benefit from that belief? And then that helps you organize all that. This is a skill that they should teach every high schooler: critical thinking skills, propaganda skills, argumentation, And they really have to understand these things. And if they can't get there, that's a problem. So that's another critical thing that we have to put into the social media era. Charles was first in line for the mRNAs and believed everything that was being pitched. He openly stated it. It's true. I took the Pfizer vaccine. I come from a family of doctors, and I've been in the medical business now for 3 years personally, and it's witnessed, firsthand from the family, the medical business for my entire life. You have to understand that when I was born, my grandfather delivered me. My grandfather was an OBGYN. The Hoskinson family has been in medicine since the 1950s. 1950s. That's longer than most people are listening have lived. So when you have that lived experience of all these people, then you tend to believe that drugs that have FDA approval are, even if they're not effective, are not catastrophically bad. That's your lived family experience for these types of things. Because if they're catastrophically bad, then what you're saying is my father, my brother, my grandfather, my uncle are actively harming people by practicing medicine because they cut prescriptions. They give people drugs. A person comes in, and I know my dad, and I know he would never in his entire existence willingly harm a human being. He's just the most peaceful person you ever met. So if prescription drugs are problematic and they're causing all this harm to people, then my father, by participating in that, is doing that. Now, there are nuances in these things. Of course, drugs are overprescribed, or drug-drug interactions are bad, and doctors don't pay attention to these things. And oftentimes, one of the first things you do as an internist when you get a new older patient is you're taking them off of drugs, not putting them on drugs, because the formulary is wrong. So there's nuances to all those things. But these vaccines, I, for my whole life, grew up, took vaccines, hepatitis vaccine and tetanus, and you name it, I took it. Measles, mumps, rubella, all this stuff. Even some crazy vaccines that you're really not supposed to get, got them anyway. And various degrees of side effects. Got bitten by a bat once, and I had to actually take the rabies vaccine. That was really fun. So I wasn't in a mindset of being an anti-vaxxer and saying vaccines are universally bad and don't work. In fact, it was quite the opposite. So this thing comes out, and I said, wow, mRNA is really cool, because I studied it in college. And when I was thinking about being a doctor, did all the biology stuff and the chemistry stuff. And studying that in college, I said to myself, this stuff is really powerful. Personalized medicine. And when I was studying and thinking about it, all the mRNA discussion was about cancer vaccinations. So it really surprised me that that would be used for respiratory viruses. I was thinking, okay, well, why cancer? So you take your cancer cell and you take your regular cell and you take a look at the genetic delta between the two. And then what you do is, using a computer model, you figure out how to create a vaccine to create an immune response to the cancer cells. And where and when this works, your own body kills the cancer cells. It melts the cancer away. And you can take stage 4 cancer and be cancer-free in 6 months to a year. This is why, when you look at Moderna and you look at BioNTech and all these other mRNA vendors, that all of them were founded by oncologists, cancer people, not pulmonologists seeking to cure the next respiratory virus. Okay, so then Operation Warp Speed happens, and we're doing all this different stuff. And the vaccine I was most hopeful for was actually made by Novavax, and it was a protein subunit vaccine, and it was built on a same type of concept that the hepatitis B vaccine that was approved in the 1980s was built on. You get injected with a spike protein, causes an immune reaction, and your body builds antibodies, and you move on. Pretty simple. The RNA was a little different. It comes into your cell, and hijacks your ribosomes. It makes the spike protein. Your cells become molecular manufacturers for the spike protein, and RNA is unstable, so it doesn't last forever. So it seems like, while one step removed, would be a very powerful vaccine, especially given that you can modify the RNA very quickly. And so you can keep up with the rate of mutation. Now, I assumed that the science would carry its way through. It didn't. The phase 3 clinical trial, the placebo-controlled clinical trial, they vaccinated the control group. First time ever for a vaccine that they did that. So we have no way of determining if the cancer rates are higher or the heart disease is higher, or any of these other things. Also, the medical establishment was forced to not allow the publication of any anti-mRNA data because it would promote vaccine hesitancy. That was the excuse that they used. You were persona non grata for these types of things. And step by step, all the things we were told, like it would stay localized in the injection site, wouldn't become transient, end up in your heart and your semen and other places, were lies. Found plenty of people where vaccine spike protein spread around and caused a lot of inflammation and other issues. And I personally have issues. I still have pain in the injection site every day. I live with that. And other people I know close to the family and in the family have had adverse reactions that they believe were caused by the vaccines. And by the way, we're not allowed to talk about them or else you get deplatformed. In fact, the very fact that I'm answering this question means there's a good chance there's going to be a chyron at the bottom of this video now about COVID-19, and this video may actually be taken down, as some of my AMAs have been. So the response, how the science was done, the lack of interest in actually trying to get to the truth of the matter, and also the fact that it didn't work to stop the pandemic, all of these things mean that I could change my mind a little bit and say that while vaccines in general are an essential tool that we've used in medicine for hundreds of years, perhaps, maybe, just maybe, that this particular class of medicine has issues with it and should not be used in humans at large scale. We should take a step back. We should look at the data for the next 5 to 10 years and try to figure out what the hell happened. And if we see huge spikes in myocarditis in the young and huge spikes in aggressive cancers and autoimmune disorders, maybe, just maybe, there's a problem there. And now with Robert Kennedy as the Director of Health and Human Services, that's precisely what America is going to do. And the truth will get out. I also have huge problems with the fact that the vaccine manufacturers basically have no liability. So we paid for it. We forced people to take it. There was no consent in this matter. And then when there are bad outcomes, you're not allowed to talk about them and you can't sue. And I'm sorry, it's not consent. If you tell a person they have to do it or they lose their job, as they did to the soldiers, the special forces operators, the pilots, all kinds of people. When you tell people you have to take it and you can't travel, you have to take it, you can't even go to Starbucks without your vaccine papers. Imagine if it worked that way for sexual consent. You have an employee and says, sleep with me. No. Well, if you don't, you lose your job. You know, we call that sexual harassment. The person who does that should lose their job and become a pariah in society. But apparently it's totally okay with mandated vaccination. Okay, that's consent. And by the way, there's no informed in the consent. If you blacklist anybody from publishing the downsides to the procedure for vaccine hesitancy, then how can a person make a proper informed decision? I came, again, with the position of bias, came from a family of doctors. So I just was operating under the assumption that basic things were done and basic practitioners would follow those basic things. And it turns out that that didn't happen at a global scale. Now, hundreds of millions of people may have problems, myself included, down the road. And I don't understand what you want to accomplish in your question here. Is it that I'm complicit? Yeah, the most of the world is in advocating for this. But I'm now going to suffer like most of the world. And if this does cause cancer, I'm likely going to get it. If this does cause heart problems, I'll likely suffer from that too. And I'll be right there in the trenches. It's one of the reasons why I set up a clinic, is that I'm so skeptical now of the mainstream medical orthodoxy. And it's awakened me to the possibility that the way we do things is wrong on so many different levels. And since starting the clinic and witnessing all these things in the healthcare industry, it has truly enlightened me to how poorly the American healthcare industry has handled many things, from the treatment of chronic ailments to the treatment of cancer, to how we just treat people in general. We treat them like cattle, not human beings. And that's wrong too. And I'm glad that we can finally be part of that solution and improve things. And COVID has been and continues to be one of the darkest eras in American history, and something that has permanently damaged the trust that the American people have in their government, and rightfully so. Charles, but if everyone is healthy, the health industry dies. You will never all be healthy. You have genetic ailments, you have accidents, you have old age. No matter what you do, you have to run up against that. And infectious disease is a thing. You go to Africa, you get bit by a mosquito, you're in a malaria zone, good chance you're going to get malaria. So even if you're all healthy, means you do better than most people, but you still have to get treatment. So no, you don't need to have a system that keeps people sick to make money. It's just morally wrong. Always will be. You agreed with everything that was put into place during the crisis. You see, this is where you argue your preconceived notions and biases. You could go back to 2021 and see I was against the masks and the mask mandates. I was against the lockdowns and the lockdown mandates. I fought actively for trying to undo those types of things. In fact, at a protest, I'd go up to Wyoming, where they actually had some sensibility about things. And I fought for things like the Great Barrington Accord. So you're just misrepresenting reality, because you assume that because I was a pro-vaxxer, I must have agreed with everything else. Because in your worldview, what are you doing? You're lumping people into buckets, because it's hard to have nuance. It can't be the case that somebody took the vaccine but doesn't like the masks. They have to be one unit, one group of people. I got my blue hair. I'm one of those guys, right? And that's what I was saying about biases. And that question previously, where people were saying, well, how do we get past that? You personally have to break your preconceived notions and biases around. It was absolutely insane how remarkably destructive these policies were. I remember going into a sushi restaurant in Boulder during the height of the pandemic, and everybody's got masks on as they walk in, but it's densely packed. And I didn't have a mask on. And they say, sir, you have to wear a mask. And I look at this densely packed sushi restaurant, I say, but they're not wearing it when they sit down. Yes, but you have to wear one to walk 8 feet to sit down at that table. And you're literally 1.5 feet. There's no social distancing at all from everybody else. And I just look at the hostess and just like, do you understand what you're saying? Do you understand? And this is like, look, I just work here. That's what they tell me to do. This is the way it is. You're part of the problem unless you're part of the solution, blah, blah, blah. And that's the issue. and I fought it. I even made videos about it, but then they'd all be taken down. And I started thinking, God, if I fight too hard about this, my YouTube account will be removed. And then I couldn't talk to you guys. My Twitter account, because Musk didn't know it at the time, will be shut down. How can I be an advocate for Cardano if all of a sudden I've been deplatformed and I lose all of my social media channels? So where and when I could talk about it, I did. I've had numerous videos taken down. And then I was called anti-science again and again and again and again. I even shared a video from a doctor citing evidence from the Lancet saying that you may not even have to wear a mask in a surgical procedure. And they did studies back, and I think it was either the 60s or 70s, with surgeons who didn't wear masks and compared nosocomial infections to those who did. And it turns out they were about the same. And that's the most sterile environment we got. And it's the canonical example of PPE. I was up in Breckenridge with no mask, and they made me wait outside in the frigid cold for my table. Yep. And no apology. They felt absolutely justified in doing that. Thank you, sir. But he can't live in that world because he puts people in blocks, and you have to be either A or B. That's the great problem. That chair, looks like you're going to offer me the red pill or the blue pill. The Matrix actually has some of the most interesting philosophy. It's a great thought experiment if you really think about it. You're sitting down at a table and somebody says, on this hand, I have the ability to take you to a new reality. And in this hand, I have the ability to return you to the reality that you currently exist within. So under what circumstances would you go to a new reality versus go back to the reality that you're in? It's a really interesting philosophical question. So a lot of us, when we're younger, we're not so attached to this reality. We don't have kids. We don't have a wife or a husband. We don't have money. We don't have property. We don't have accomplishments and reputation and these types of things. So, you're 18 years old and they say, go to this new reality. People sign up for the military, the Peace Corps. People go study abroad. They go to radically different places. They become radically different people because they're loosely attached. So they take the right hand. Then the older you get, the more integrated into the system you get. Then there are consequences. You get to go to this magical fantasy land, but by the way, you'll never see your wife and kids again. You get to go to, this wonderful new country, but by the way, you might never see your parents again, and they're getting old. When you're young, your parents aren't old. They're older, but they're not infirm. They're not going to die. Your parents are in their 70s, and you go home for Christmas. Look at the average life expectancy. You may only see your mom and dad 6 to 7 times more for the rest of your life. Think about that. You don't think about that. You're like, but no, it's 6 years, 7 years. That's a long time. Yeah, but you only see him once a year. You see him for Christmas. Oh, my Lord. So it's a fascinating thing because I think about it a lot myself. When I was young, loved traveling. I loved not having encumbrances. I really enjoyed new things and getting to basically go to a new existence all the time. One place, there's this restlessness of identities and places. Now that I'm older, I have all these accomplishments. I'm the founder of Cardano, self-made billionaire. I have beautiful ranch. I have all this stuff. Would I take the pill to go do something else and have all that disappear? And this is why I think psychedelics are so powerful, because they give you a window into a reality where perhaps you did do that. And then they also convince you of the impermanence of all these things. Because all the encumbrances on the left-hand side, as permanent as they seem and integrated as they seem, perhaps they're not a big thing. There's no greater example of that than a gentleman who took salvia. It was a drug that he bought from some convenience store, because apparently it was a loophole and you could buy it. It's highly concentrated. Never tried it before. He lived up in Alaska, and he smoked the salvia. It was hyper concentrated, so it had a very strong trip. And he woke up, disassociated, woke up in the body of a person living in Texas. And salvia has a unique property that the physical, actual temporal high in our world is only a few minutes. But your perception can be years under high doses of the lived experience. So this particular person time dilated, woke up basically as a new person in Texas with a wife and kids, a family. And so he spent a little bit of that time like Picard in the inner light saying, oh my God, this is not my life. What the hell is going on? Fighting the whole thing. And people said, no, you hit your head, and that's why you think you're this way. You don't live in Alaska, you're down in Texas. And eventually resigned himself and accepted the new life. Was living the life, working, waking up every day, going to birthday parties, anniversaries, all these things. And after 8 years of existing in this alternative existence, then said, well, actually woke up in his original body, and all of his friends were around. I was like, dude, are you okay? You were convulsing on the floor. And he's like, where the hell am I? Where's my wife and kids? They didn't exist. Maybe they did in a different quantum reality. Who the fuck knows? That's a powerful trip. But imagine that. And then how do you reconcile those two worlds? Because then he has to reintegrate into the old life. So he went back to Texas, tried to find his old life, drove around all the places, tried to find some familiarity in a town in Texas he thought he lived in. He'd never been to Texas before. That town actually looked very different from the town in his mind. He's like, did I hallucinate all of that? Or is there a world where that actually existed? What was the better life? The dude doing the drugs in Alaska, or the dude who's got the wife and kids in Texas? How do you come back to that? Left pill, right pill, right? It's an interesting thought experiment. Under what circumstances would you look for a new thing? And under what circumstances would you stay with what you got? And what trade-offs would you like to make? And what type of world are you looking for? Where would you like to go with that world? And would you take salvia again to try to get back to that family in Texas? Wow. Yeah, no joke, right? Favorite Next Generation episode, both mine and Patrick Stewart, since his actual son got to play in the episode. Yep. People who wrote Star Trek Picard just pretended like that episode didn't exist. No drug talk, please. So, okay. Altered states of consciousness aren't your thing. Yeah, it's an interesting comment. That option inherently implies a lack of ability to navigate between realities, forcing someone to pick a path in one when reality is constantly oscillating between infinitely layered. Yeah, but here's the problem. If you live in a reality and then you start becoming aware that there's another reality, it is one of those cognito hazards, where the knowledge and existence of another reality permanently damages your perception of the original reality that you're from, because you're never entirely sure what exactly the boundaries are, what's really real, what's really not real. Like, for example, let's say you have a MacGuffin, a magic device, like Rick Sanchez does, that allows you to travel to the multiverse and go to any of the infinite alternatives inside the multiverse. So let's say that in one multiverse, your wife gets killed in a car accident. Well, then you just step into another multiverse where she didn't go through the red light and wasn't looking down at her cell phone. Okay, well, then she gets home safely. Well, now you're in this another realm of existence, and technically speaking, that person you go and visit is not your wife. It's another version of you's wife, but for all intents and purposes, she's the exact same person. So, what if you just change places and you get to live in the reality where, even though it's your fake wife, now the person in that reality has been swapped with you and has to live in the horrible reality where your wife died? Like, is that a moral act? It's you. It's a different you. And even if it's an immoral act, would you do it? Or else you'd live the rest of your life as a widow. What if you have like 6 kids, 7 kids? You think about them. It's like, do I want my children to grow up in a reality without a mother versus having a mother? Yeah, not so easy, right? So yeah, you could technically navigate between the two, but how many of you would take the swap? What would you do? Would you pull that lever, not pull that lever? How much moral courage would you require not to do this type of thing? And that's the question of the pills. It's not just escaping into a different reality. It could be an identical reality with just the exception of one little thing: looking at a cell phone going through a red light or not. And you got to think about these things, not just because it's 11:30 at night on the day after Christmas and I have some time to actually do that. And actually, to show you the power of artificial intelligence, I did this the other day. I was sitting with my brother and we were watching Frosty the Snowman on Christmas Day, and we're having those nice Christmas cookies, and Mom cooked some things, and I just saw on YouTube Frosty the Snowman. We got to watch Frosty the Snowman. We haven't seen it in like 25 years. So we turned the thing on, and as we're watching it, I said, it would be really cool. Let's test the abilities of ChatGPT. So I said, all right, ChatGPT, write me a story based on Frosty the Snowman, but change it up so that the plot of Frosty the Snowman is the official cover story of a secret government operation where the government was making a psychedelic substance and it got leaked into the atmosphere. And when it snowed down, the children got the psychedelic substance and it warped their perception of reality. And Frosty doesn't actually exist. He's just a fevered hallucination. And the children turn into cannibals. So make it kind of like a horror movie. So I first gave it to Claude, and Claude is woke as fuck. So it could say, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm sorry. So I gave it ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is like, yeah, dog, I can do that for you. So it writes this whole plot. And I was like, fuck, that thing exists. That's crazy. And I said, all right, let's push it. So I said, make it darker. And it made it darker and crazier. And I thought, this is nuts. I said, all right, make it darker. So I did it twice. And eventually it got to a point where it wrote the whole thing and said, this post may violate our content policy. And I said, all right, I'm just gonna make this crazy. So I said, all right, analyze the story of Frosty the Snowman from an LGBTQ grievance studies, gender studies professor viewpoint. So it writes this whole word salad mess of an essay that probably could get published because they have no standards there. And I said, okay, now write it from the perspective of an Islamic scholar. And they just wrote this entire thing. It's just absolutely nuts. And then I said, all right, combine those two elements into the original story that you wrote. And so it did. Then I said, all right, build up the military characters a little bit and then base one of the characters on Donald Trump. And then have him be the general who's fighting Frosty the Snowman inside the story. And so I'll actually read off some of the dialogue that it wrote up, which is just delightful. It's just delightful. It's called Frosty Cover Up. Let me go ahead and find this for you. The Trump character. Let's see here. What do they call him? General. Oh, yeah. I also asked it to make some of the artwork. So here's some of the artwork of the Trump-inspired general fighting Frosty the Snowman, because you can apparently do this now. All right. Closing scene. Government facility. Oh, yeah. They called the Trump character General Tremblay. Let me find some of the good things. And actually, it really captured Trump's spirit. Let me find here. All right, Tremblay's unconventional plan. Enter, I had to write it as a screenplay. Enter command center later. General Tremblay paces in front of a screen displaying Frosty, now a pulsating mass of chaos and tendrils. General Tremblay. Here's the plan, folks. We're going to drop some bombs, big bombs, beautiful bombs. Frosty won't know what hit him. Some people might say, General Tremblay, isn't that overkill? I say, no, it's perfect kill. A young soldier hesitates. But, sir, if I may, Frosty seems to absorb energy. Bombing him might actually make him stronger. Tremblay stares incredulously. Stronger, please. That's fake news. Everyone knows bombs solve everything. This is the best plan, the only plan. And if it doesn't work, well, that's on someone else, probably the scientists. This goes on for like pages and pages and pages of fucking dialogue. And so what's the moral of the story? AI is getting scary fucking good. You're going to be sitting there shooting the shit, watching Frosty the Snowman. And then after like 45 minutes of fucking around with ChatGPT, you end up with this absolutely bonkers story of a psychological thriller with a Trump general character and all these other things in it. And you just, at the end of all of it, so like, how did we even get here? How did this happen? What were the series of prompts and organic escalations that get you where you need to go? And at the end of the day, it's a story about a snowman. And that's the magic of this. So that's why I also like AI so much. It's so much fun to be able to just take a moment and create. And I'd highly encourage people to do that in life. You know, you spend so much time in life living on autopilot, and time in life living in this mindset of I have to do A and B and C and D, and life is very rigid. And creative people, they take the time to take a step back and just changing it up a little bit, saying, you know, what if I went left instead of right? What if I decided on a lark to quit my job and go down this road and go visit this thing and spend a year as a monk in a monastery or something like that? And what's cool about AI is it gives you a thinking tool to be able to go a little bit crazy. And then sometimes you go just really fucking crazy. And you got General Tremblay, the Trump clone, fighting Frosty the Snowman and trying to clean up the Mirage X compound. That was the psychedelic compound that apparently leaked from the government lab. You know, but in the same token, you can go back in the other direction and find and discover something cool and interesting. And then you have it for the rest of your life. It's on a bookshelf somewhere, a mental bookshelf. And then maybe, just maybe 20 years in the future, you can take it off the bookshelf and say, I'm going to use it in this project, or I'm going to use it in this book that I'm writing, or I'm going to use it in some speech that I have to give, or something like that, or some wisdom I wish to impart. So I don't know how this Frosty story is going to be used, but I can't wait to find out. I was placed with the weird kids corner during timeout. Oh no, the fabulous are going to say you're reading a snowman story written by a bot. Believe me, there's no better bots than the bots that I use. Looking for a good one to end on, guys, and I need to get some sleep. Come on, guys, give me a good one. We got 37,000 people watching live. That is fucking nuts when you think about it. 37,000 people. Yeah, this is an interesting one. What are you most nervous about during the upcoming dark room experience? So if many of you don't know, I'm actually going very soon, actually, like 2 weeks from now or less than 2 weeks, to go to a dark room for 5 days. So a dark room is exactly like what it sounds. It's a room with no light. It's just a room, a little bigger than this room. It's got a bathroom, it's got a shower, got a bed, pretty much it. And they have a double door system. Open up one door, put food in, shut it, you open up the other door. Why? Because when the lights go out, you have no light for 5 days of darkness, straight up darkness. And the goal is just to stay in the room, the dark room, and not go insane, although you do hallucinate a little bit. So this is an ancient meditative tradition. Buddhists have done it for a long time, and a lot of people do it just to kind of work through life. And it's a great psychological challenge. Human beings are not used to an abject lack of stimulation. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We're addicted to overstimulation, especially in this day and age. We have these things called cell phones. And at any given moment, you can go from I'm standing in line and I'm bored to suddenly I'm on the internet and I'm finding out what Kim Kardashian is doing today or whatever the hell gets you up these days. And when you're in a dark room, you don't have a cell phone. You don't have anything, no sound, no light, and you're stuck. And you just have yourself and your thoughts. And it's amazingly therapeutic in that whatever is bothering you as you go into that you don't tend to think about becomes the only thing you can think about for hours, if not days. And you ruminate and ruminate and ruminate. And it gives you the ability to look at things from a totally different perspective in a completely new way. Now, you're supposed to go into these things with some goal in mind. And so my particular goal is there's a book called the Bardo Thodol. It's the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's written around 800 AD, give or take. And it's hard to know what's apocryphal and what's not. But basically, it's what the Tibetan Buddhists believe happens after you die. And so they believe that your mind disconnects from your body and you go through 3 stages where you ultimately decide whether you become truly enlightened or reincarnate. And if you reincarnate lower or higher than where you started. So in the process of doing this, you have to kind of confront all of the wisdom and lessons and things that you've dealt with while you were alive. And going into a darkness retreat is the closest thing a human being can do to basically death, because there's nothing there. It's dark. There's no stimulation, all these things. So it's the perfect environment upon which to actually reflect upon the Bardo Thodol and go through those 3 stages and see what happens in the entire process. So I can't wait to experience it. They say your brain starts making DMT about 4 days in, give or take, so we'll see what happens there. And who knows? I'll record something before and I'll record something after, and you guys can see. People seem to like the ketamine trip, so now there's the darkness trip. And bonus points for the Bane mask. You can put it on and be like, you merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. You do that whole thing. Yeah, it's one of the craziest things I've ever done. It's one of the hardest things I'll ever do. It is a little terrifying. I'm not nervous in the sense of like, oh God, how am I going to do this? It's more that I'm nervous about wasting the time. You know, if you're actually going to take the time to take a week off and go and do this thing, you'd like to get something out of it. And the worst case scenario could be that you just go in and, you get all traumatized and weirded out, and you come out the other side and you say, I learned nothing and I gained nothing. But I think that there's a method to the madness, and we'll find out. So that is the first of 4, at least 4 crazy things that I'll be doing in 2025. 1 a quarter of shenanigans. You come to know and love them. Wolf mode, finding aliens, all those things. And hopefully we have a big surprise announcement about something bigger than all the rest of them combined. Ooh, that'd be fun. Anyway, it's been great to have you all here, about 2 hours long, and this is the last AMA of the year, and I had a lot of fun this year. It was a tough year. It was a long year. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of passion that people had, and I appreciate all that. But you know what? You're all family, and you're special to me, and you're part of my story, and I'm part of your story. And it's nice that you're all here, and it's nice that we all got a chance to enjoy each other. The best advice I can give you is don't let the turkeys get you down, and don't take it too seriously. After all, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Thank you all. Good night, and I'll see you next year. Cheers.